Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our week 2 of our school climate survey weekly webinar. Today, we're going to talk about upgrading your system locales. Like I said, my name is Chad Johnson. I'm new here to the Department of Education. And right now, I'd like to turn it over to Tracy, and she's going to walk us through the steps.
Oh, one quick note. Hey, Chad, before
Hey,
we
how
turn
are
it
you?
over to Tracy, hey, do you mind if I add one little note before we turn it over to her?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. And I apologize, I didn't have this up. I just realized. Um, so some people may not have been with us last week. So as Chad said, this is week 2. Um, Definitely the Tracy and Chad show today, but I just had a couple things I wanted to um, highlight for the group. So as Chad said, Sisla cows is the topic of the day. We're going to have that walkthrough.
Right, this is where I've already done this, where you have to
I think,
select.
yep. So some of you may have already done this. This is something that's important. And before we turn it over to Tracy, just a quick note on the why behind that. You guys may have gotten a notification from Laura Corin before she's out for a little bit, but before she headed out, she did send out some information on this, and Chad has also reiterated that. But one thing that we realized as Chad and I were looking at this is not only do you need to set up your syslocales, but you need to make sure that you set them up the same way the SCDE did, so that you get those, or your students have those translations for the student school climate survey. Some of you, if you use Ecollect for other purposes, you may have already set up locales like for other purposes, and many of you may not have, and that's fine. And so that's one of the things Tracy will address. But basically, right now would probably be a good time with the screen that you see shared here to just take a quick little screenshot of this so that you see when Tracy does that walkthrough exactly what the settings are going to be. And that way, if you need to kind of go back and do that later, if you're unable to follow along for whatever reason right now, I mean, you could just follow along with her and do it literally right now. But if not, you would have a little picture of this, and we'll also share the slides. But one thing that she'll kind of walk you through that's a little different is you'll notice that for the country, you might be thinking, well, wow, why does it say Russian and then it says United States? And she'll kind of talk through why. But basically, this has to do with the fact that the student's actually taking the survey in the United States. And in any case, this is how you're going to need to set it up, bottom line, because it's how SCDEs is set up, and you just want to make sure that it matches. So yeah, that is all I wanted to just put out there. And if y'all want to take a quick screenshot again, now would be a great time to do that, so you have it handy. And then for sure, we'll turn it back over to Tracy. And yes, I know that Chad has also shared with you guys the scribe instructions too. But I wasn't sure if the information detailed here was something that everyone was clear on. So we just want to make sure you guys have that. All right. All right. Thanks, y'all, for letting me throw that in there, and just gonna toss it over to Tracy. But I do see one hand raised. Hey, Joe, do you have a question, or want to make sure we answer any?
Yes, and I'm sorry if you covered what I'm going to ask last week. Just say that, and then I will get with you offline about this. I don't want to waste everybody's time.
All good.
So we do use locales already in our district, and so this gives me, because I'm familiar with it, the little concern that I have is once we set up locales, that will be an option for parents when they log into Parent Portal to pick languages like Russian. But we don't have anybody to translate the rest of Parent Portal and Power School for those parents. So are we supposed to just do this during the climate survey and then turn it off, right? Or is somebody going to be able to provide us translation services for the rest of Power School so parents won't be able to use it?
Sure. And this is something Tracy may be able to speak to a little bit better. No, we did not go into this last time, by the way. So it's a great question. I think I understand what you're asking. You're basically wanting to ensure, are they essentially going to be given this option like, hey, you should have this language option for these other surveys. It sounds like you want to be cautious to make sure that there's not sort of this misconception that they would have those language options for other surveys when you wouldn't be providing that. And I don't think that setting these up is going to automatically do that. I think for any survey that you put out there, you decide, is there an associated translation? So no. So the short answer is no. We're not providing districts with a translation service for all the, but it should not do that to you. Basically, this is just ensuring that like the same translations that you guys had last year for the survey are available.
Well, here's what it actually does. So when you go to log into Parent Portal, the first thing you get to do is set your language for Parent Portal once you turn on locales. So if I set my language to Russian when I log into Parent Portal, as a parent, I would be expecting everything in Parent Portal to be in Russian, but none of it will be. It will all still be in English unless we translate it. But we don't have anybody who can translate to Russian. So, right. So all of Parent Portal, not just our surveys, but everything else in Parent Portal, our fees, our, everything cannot be translated to these other languages except for the ones we can translate Vietnamese and Spanish, but we can't translate all those other languages. And that's my worry, is that parents, I don't know how many Russian speakers we have in my district, so it may be moot anyway, but for whatever language, we have Chinese speakers, for example. But if we're not translated to Chinese on all our other Power School pages or Parent Portal pages, online registration, course requests, all that stuff, I'm worried that that's going to be problematic for some of those parents.
So you're worried that they will make the assumption that by selecting that language that everything should be translated. Is that the thought?
Yes, because they'll be selecting it as they log into Parent Portal.
Right. So I hear you. And again, I'm going to, Tracy, I hope you're listening. This is maybe one for you to address. I hear you loud and clear, Joe. I think if that's the case, if that's a concern that you have, I would probably suggest that there might be a little messaging that, hey, because we want to make this particular survey available with those translations or certain translations, that will be an option. But the meaning of that selection is not all your pages are now in that language. Basically, they're setting that language to make sure that for surveys that have that language available, that they have it available. And so that is definitely a thing you may want to consider communicating. And then to your other point, should you then turn them off? That's one where I'll let Tracy, you maybe address that. I think you can go in and delete them after the fact. You would have to remember maybe next year if we had a similar thing to kind of reset them up. But I think that is something you could do. But yeah, Tracy, this is probably a good time for us to let you speak to what Joe's concerned and also maybe do that walkthrough.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tracy Mortara. I've probably spoken to some of you before in the past, just as we've done climate surveys or at the original starting of this. So, excuse me, apologies. So Joe, yeah, totally understand. Because if you select the language, anything translated within the Parent Portal will then be appearing. So if you don't translate anything within the rest of the portal, nothing will show except for the form that has been translated in the Parent Portal. So other than going through and translating everything within the Parent Portal, there's on the Ecollect side, that's really more of a SIS piece. Disabling the translations afterwards or the locales afterwards. So my question to you would then be, are you utilizing locales in any way, shape, or form for any of your other forms? Because if you are, you can't, there's no way to remove the locales and still retain the languages on your other forms. So that would be something I would definitely check before you, because you can always go in and delete the locales, but if you delete the locales, anything within any of your portals, any of the, because now with the system locales, it's going to be SIS and Ecollect. So it doesn't just impact Ecollect at this point. So that's something I would definitely just check, because if anything is actually translated in any way, shape, or form, then yeah, if deleting the locale is going to be an issue.
Yeah, so we do use some locales, but the ones that we use, we would not be deactivating. I would only be deactivating the additional ones, but thank you for responding to that.
Yeah, no problem. And And I mean, yeah, if the climate survey is the only thing you're using like Russian or Ukrainian or Chinese simplified or traditional for, then I mean, I don't see any reason like deleting them. I mean, if you wanted to just triple check and just making sure nothing would be impacted, like stored in the tables or anything like that. I mean, you could always put an assist support like case just to, hey, just checking up if I'm deleting those locales, it's not going to have any issue moving forward if I were to go in and then add them back again. That's the only piece that I would definitely like maybe check with SIS before you just deleted it. But on the Ecollect side, for sure, if you delete it, you can always add a locale back and then associate a language in your forms. Okay. Anybody, I think somebody else is off of mute, but I'm not sure if it's a question or. Okay, perfect. All right. So yes, today what we want to go through is just talking about the migrating. If you haven't already, some of you may have done this. So that is perfect. Great. This first part really isn't for you. It's just when we start talking about the, it's just when we start talking about the
Collins.
Oh,
I'm good. How are you?
I might mute.
Hey, everybody, just check real quick. Make sure we're all muted. Sorry, we didn't do sort of an automatic mute for everyone, but we're getting a little bit from some folks. So if y'all could just do a quick check, we'll do a check as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy. Okay.
Yeah, I think I got that one.
Thank you. Oh, Wendy or Chad, can you enable sharing for me? I just noticed I cannot share.
Yeah, hold tight, Tracy.
Thanks. And so while they do that, so again, this first part is just that migration piece. So if you haven't migrated and if you're curious about it or have questions about it, that's kind of what we're going to go through at the first part. The second part is talking through the actual region language pairing that we need for the climate survey. So a couple of things that I really want to point out is if you have already set up locales and they are associated to some translations within either your forms or anything else in your SIS, please do not edit those, especially on the Ecollect forms. Ecollect forms, once you migrate that language, we ask don't edit that locale because then that locale becomes different than what you originally set up and associated to the language in the form. So, oh, perfect. Becomes different than what you originally associated within the form. And so if you do edit the language after associating a form language, it will break that link and you will lose those translations. So when we're talking about these languages that you need for the climate survey, we're just asking you to create that exact locale within your SIS so that you then have it for the climate survey. If you do not create these locales, these region language pairings, exactly the way we have it set up with the climate survey, you will just get the form will just default in English. So, okay, perfect. Sharing is now.
Come from?
Did somebody come up? Did somebody have a question?
No, this I put them there yesterday. Yeah, no.
All right,
But
let's check some
Okay.
mics again. Do a
Perfect.
quick check.
All right. So, configure form languages. That's the old way of how I know some of you could have Enrollment Express, but I'm specifically speaking to Ecollect, but it pertains to both if you have both products. So configure form languages was the old way of us being able to add a language to the form. So to get to the page, if you haven't migrated, system management, forms, configure form languages. So again, old way of doing it. If you've already done it, this page will disappear. That's fine. You no longer need it. With the, I believe it was like 2412 release, they released this to basically make it easier for you as admins to not have to manage two separate language settings within your SIS. This now allows you to manage system locales in just one spot and then still be able to utilize those languages within your forms. So configure form languages, you used to be able to see, you know, the language, default, user count. This is the new column that came up when you started talking about migrating. So what we're asking everybody to do, if you haven't already, is navigate to this page, take a look at what you currently have. You may have, some people just have like English, Spanish. That's a very common thing, English, Spanish, or English, Vietnamese, or English, Portuguese, things like that. So it depends. You don't have to set up all of the locales for the climate survey before you migrate. You only need to set up locales for the number of languages you have currently on your configure form languages, because in this system locale mapping section, you'll get a drop down to then associate the SIS locale to the form language that you currently have. So as you can see here, I don't have enough languages or locales set up to match what I have in my languages. So I would have to then go to system management, localization, and then system locales. And so this is where you really start, and this is where you will manage languages locales from now on within your forms. As soon as you set something up here, if you go into your forms, oh, and again, this, none of this is has PII, none of this has anything. So this is just a test server. So when you go into one of your forms, if I come in here and I go to translate a piece of some element, some text of the form, here, it will show whatever we have set up in the locales once you migrate. Right now, I'm still utilizing the configure form languages. So first step to do this, to migrate, is check your configure form languages. You can take a screenshot, you can keep this open, you can utilize the split view, which I'm going to do right now because it's a little easy to see. So as you can see, more languages here than I have in system locales. So what I need to do is then set up, so I'm going to take Japanese. I don't have a system locale for it. So what I want to do is add locale. And I'm going to say Japanese. Then I need to find, and you can type and it should recognize. Sometimes if you type slow, it won't recognize like and go straight to Japanese. But so this is the language. This is the display name. This is the name that's going to show when a parent is logging into their parent portal and needs to select a language. This is what it's going to show. This is also what's going to show in your system locales list. That's the display name. The language is basically whatever language you're using, you know, Japanese, Spanish, Chinese, any of that kind of stuff. The country is the locale of where you're accessing. So this is kind of a part where it gets kind of confusing. But what we always recommend, almost everybody here probably is just accessing through the United States. So we usually always just recommend to set up United States. And then, so for calendar system, we leave it at Gregorian. Date format, you select the date format that is within your SIS, and then you can fill out, and then the only other one that's actually required is time format. So 12-hour clock, wait, yeah, I always get that confused. And then these are some not required options. And then at the bottom, you have a system default locale, which I'm assuming everybody's will always stay as English. So you can just not select that. So this is basically how, this is as easy as it is to set up a locale. So when we give you a list of the locales needed for the climate survey, that's all you have to do. And in the list that we have, we've listed it exactly what you need to set up. If you already have, say, one that you might see is you might already have a Spanish locale. So if you already have let me take this one step at a time. So when you're done setting this up, click submit. And I want to show you what it's going to look like on your configure form languages page, once it refreshes, you'll now see you have that additional option here. So as you set up the languages that you need, as you set up the locales that you need to associate with a language, you'll see it in that dropdown. So, and I don't want to, I know we're short on time, so I don't want to go through and set every single one of these up, but to migrate, all you have to do is then go find the language. So here I have Spanish, I need Japanese. I have Japanese language on the configure form languages page. I need to now map that to the Japanese sys locale, and you go and do the same thing. So English, I now map it to the English locale. Spanish, map it to the Spanish locale, and so on. So once you have everything mapped, you can then go ahead and click submit. Once you submit, you can't go back. There's no going back to this page. There's no going back here because everything will now be managed in system locales. So if for some reason you map two things to say English, you will get an error message stating like, hey, you need to fix your mappings and go back and just then map it to Arabic. Or if you don't have it set up yet, set up the system locale, then map it to Arabic here, click submit, and then that will transition. So any languages you have on your forms, as long as you created a system locale for it and mapped it when you migrated everything, then that language on your form is still going to be available. You're still going to see the Spanish language as it was before. So that's the long and short of migrating languages. It's a pretty easy.
Now, Wendy spoke yesterday, but I think for the most part, I had everything.
Thank you. So yeah, it's a pretty easy step. I would definitely follow the scribe. If you have any questions, you can always either reach out or a support case on how to. Pretty easy steps, but one thing we always tell everybody: this page will go away in your system management settings here. This will no longer be here. You will always now go to this localization page and the system locales page. So when we're talking about system locales, what Joe brought up earlier is completely correct. When you select, when you're logging into the portal, that's how the parent is going to determine what language they're going to get the form in. So with the climate survey, you all know Chinese traditional, simplified, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, Ukrainian, and Vietnamese. So when a parent is logging in, right now, I only have these languages here. So when a parent logs in, they're going to be able to select these languages. And then that's going to determine what language they get the form in. So that is also why we ask you to set up these specific translations system locales, because the system locale, to determine what language you're going to get on the form and to ensure you have the correct translations, it's a language region pairing. And so that's why we give you this, because we want to make sure that you have everything correct, because if not, it's just going to default in English. And I say this because I wanted to highlight one specific thing in Spanish. A lot of you may already be utilizing Spanish in your forms and you've already migrated it, but say maybe when you migrated it, your Spanish is maybe set up to be Spanish Mexico. So we have it set up like this because we actually work with some customers in Mexico. So this is why we have it set up in this way. Typically, because you're in the United States, because your student body is going to be accessing this form through a locale of the United States, that's why we recommend this country of United States. So if you're one of those people that has either Spain or Mexico there, what we just recommend, just adding a new locale. And you could say Spanish. And if you want to, you can even say climate survey. And that's what the display name. So the parent's going to see that. But then you select the language as Spanish. And then for the country, just select United States. And then again, follow the options that are available or that are on that sheet. So that is how you're going to want to set up that Spanish. And so I can select it. Perfect. Okay. So when you submit that, you'll see you now have technically 2 Spanish locales, but this Spanish locale is going to just be specific to the setup that we're going to need for the climate survey. And that's okay. And so, you know, again, like going back to Joe's the conversation a little bit earlier, like if you wanted to delete them after, I would just recommend, you know, checking with support, just making sure that there is no issue with it, but you could just leave it. It's, you know, it's no harm. It's only going to be in that little drop down where the parent, just know that these locales will appear in that drop down when the parent is trying to log into a portal. So one other thing I wanted to highlight really quickly is the Chinese simplified and traditional. You've heard me say this entire time now, that basically the country is the locale, that the country is typically going to be the United States because that's where your student body is accessing this form. This is the one exception. Chinese simplified is mapped to a country of China, and Chinese traditional is mapped to a country of Hong Kong. We do this because you cannot have 2 locales that have the same language and the same country. So I couldn't do Chinese and then country United States and Chinese and country United States for both of these, because you would get an error if you tried to do that. So for the climate survey, because we do have those 2 separate sets of translations, we just had to create 2 separate distinctive locales. And so it's not going to change anything or within that exact translation or anything. It's just going to allow the parent to be able to select either Chinese traditional or Chinese simplified. The only difference is it's going to just show that that locale is set in either China or Hong Kong, which is okay in this situation, but that's just kind of how we have to set it up for Chinese traditional and simplified. So that's the one little exception to everything we're just kind of speaking of. So one thing, again, I just wanted to highlight, once you have a locale set up, please do not edit it. So if you, like I said, if you already have Spanish, if you already have some of the recommended locales, please do not edit your current locales, because we don't want to break any sort of linking that you already have. So just go in, set up the new locale like this, like we did with Spanish. I just want to make sure that, you know, we don't add any additional work to anybody. So Wendy, Chad, I know we're kind of running to time. I don't know if we have any questions. I think somebody has a hand up. Let's see.
So my question, and I appreciate you being mindful of our time. I know a lot of us are getting ready to jump on this cohort meeting. So my question is, if I don't have configure form languages available and I have syslocales already set up, if I add another language, will configure form languages pop back up for me?
This
For me
page?
to map? Yes.
No, this page is gone. If you have already migrated this page, you don't need it. There's nothing else for it. The only thing you would have to do is set up these locales on this system locales page. That's all you have to do.
Okay, I wanted to be clear on that, since this is new for me and I didn't have it available, and I'm probably not the only one, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. This configure form languages page is now deprecated. It is, you don't need it in any way, shape, or form. Everything's going to be dictated by that system locales page.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Hey, Tracy, there's a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, one was, can they still add languages without adding system locales?
Are you talking about adding configure form languages here on this page?
Yes.
No. So you can technically still utilize this page. The page is still there, but for the climate survey, you will not get any of the translated text if you utilize configure form languages, because the survey is all using system locales now, and so you would not get the translated text. So to get that translated text, it's just your survey would default to English at that point, but if you're using system locales and have the locale set up, you will get the translated text. Let me see what else. What if you're Joe, you have your hand up?
Yes, and there was another question from me in the chat, which you can ignore because you answered it while you were talking. But this is my question. So this is for, because we've been talking about this. Is this for Qualtrics? Is that gonna pass that through the parent through like that? Like, because we don't, who's this serving?
This is the
Is my
student
question.
survey.
So, okay, so it's for if our students don't speak English.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's the only, from what I'm aware, the student survey is the only one that has translated text at this point. So, yes, great question. Let me see, what if your system locale did not have Russian and confirm? Pamela, if you're still on, what if your system locale did not have Russian and from
You can
language?
disregard. You can disregard. I ended up seeing it in there.
Okay,
It just doesn't say Russian. It's just in that little language.
Oh,
So
are you talking about
disregard
this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
guys-
Yeah,
Okay.
it's got that PYC instead of Russian. So, but I found it. It was there.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
And just so y'all know, we will be putting the video out once our communication department goes through it and make sure it's okay. We'll edit them down, the beginning and the ending, so it's just the middle meat part. And also, sorry, I had a couple questions on here I was going to try to answer. I also put a link in the chat for the scribe that walks you through how to do this.
And I see one of the questions, if we add new languages that were not previously configured, will this cause users to have to reset passwords when PowerSchool logins are authenticated through DAP? I'm not aware on the PowerSchool side of any sort of like reset of passwords. This just then allows parents to select from the different languages whenever they're logging in. So I'm not aware of any reset of passwords. And I can show you that too if you are. Let me do this. Oh, I can see. Oh, see, so this when the parents log in, that's the language we set up. So Spanish climate survey there. So these are the languages that the parent would be able to select. So it would be a little bit confusing for the parent because they would see Spanish and Spanish climate survey, but I don't want you to delete any of your previous locales that might be associated with translation somewhere in the SIS or in your languages and then have an issue later on. Let's see, any other questions? Okay, please describe my question. Is one Mandarin and the other one? Joe, did you get your about the Mandarin and Cantonese? Let's see if that. So for other languages other than Chinese and traditional English, the country needs to state United States for all the other languages. So for instance, Japanese needs to show United States in the country and not Japan. Yes, that is correct on so Stephanie's question. So basically it's so for the instance of so for all of the other languages other than Chinese simplified and traditional and English, the country needs to state United States for all of the other languages. So for instance, Japanese needs to show United States as the country and not Japan as the country. That is correct because you will be accessing that form within the United States, not Japan. So if for some reason you have some sort of like international program or something like that, and the form might be accessed outside, that's when you could, think about, okay, I maybe want to use Japan as the country instead of the United States. Joe, you have a question?
Yeah, just further on that. So what does that country setting actually do?
This just serves as the locale ID. I don't know how far within the SIS, like that side of things, but just within our Ecollect forms, I can speak to it. It just serves as like the locale. And so it's just the way that our translations, the way everything kind of pairs with our forms now, it's like region, the language, and then the country. So it just basically shows if you're looking into like the tables and things like that, like the locale of where they've logged into the document. We have a bunch of international customers where some people are in different countries. And so they want to see where a form was completed. And so that's really where that like country comes into play, like especially with Ecollect forms. With CIS, I can't speak to that, but for our forms, that's really what it is.
Well, I don't know this. I just assumed when I saw it field when I was setting up our locales that that was a dialect. So like if you choose Spanish, do you want Mexico or Spain?
Right.
And so so I was just wondering, but I don't know how that would affect everything else.
I don't.
Obviously, your forms aren't set in a dialect, but I didn't know
No,
if you did
yeah.
that with other stuff.
I'm trying to configure. Yeah, our the way they have just described it to us, like, and talked through it is basically it's just allowing, like, in the if you go into the tables, you'll be able to see the locale of where that form was accessed, and so that country is really that kind of data point to understand where everything is being accessed. And so honestly, like for the United States, it always seems like, and I don't know how they represent it in CIS or in the documentation in CIS, but any of the Ecollect documentation, it speaks to where you locate, or sorry, where you access the form. I don't know if any other CIS documentation says anything else. I can definitely check on that, but for us, it doesn't really do much other than tell you where they're accessing the form, to be completely honest. And just having that region country pairing, or the language region pairing, that's how whenever we do like the migration and everything, that's how like we can associate our form languages with your system locales. We take that region language pairing.
And if anybody didn't get the that one screenshot that Wendy said, the screenshot, I posted that picture in the chat a couple different places so y'all can find it. And that way you can just set it up like this, because a similar question kind of came up in one of our meetings, and we were told by some of the Power School folks that set it up like this if you want your surveys to work. That's kind of the question. That's kind of how that question was answered for us.
And then there was a question about, I already have a Chinese US, so I will need to add the simplified China and the Chinese Hong Kong also. Yes. Excuse me. Yes. And so you can just set up then, if you already have a Chinese, you can, yes, do Chinese simplified as your display. And then you can do country as China, or wait, what did I say? I don't want to, yes, China or Hong Kong. And then you'll still just have like your Chinese United States locale, and then you'll have these two. And if you wanted to, like I said, you can always add that. Climate survey next to it. So like if and that could just be like part of the directions for any of your parents, or sorry, your students taking the survey. It's like, hey, you might want to select this to be able to get that translated text.
So about the Chinese one then, so Ecollect has two different Chinese options, right? Chinese simplified, and well, actually I think they had three different options, but you're choosing two of them. But then on the system locales, there is only one Chinese. So can you not just map both of those Chinese options to the one Chinese in system locales? If the country itself isn't actually doing anything except telling you where it was accessed, then you could just keep it as the United States.
So you're saying
Does that
like
make sense? Yeah,
Are
so
you
like
saying-
if you're on system locales and you click language, there's only one Chinese language.
Yeah.
Right. So couldn't you just create one Chinese locale and then over on the forms languages, just map your simplified and traditional both to the same locale?
No. Thank you for clarifying your question. No, because you can only map one language. Sorry.
One locale.
Yes, one language to one locale. If you try to map like like say you have one Chinese locale, if you try to map your simplified and traditional, it will give you an error. You cannot do that.
And then, so this whole thing with the Chinese is confusing to me. Of course, I don't read kanji, so I don't know which one is which, but they're obviously different because simplified, the the written language is saying something different than the traditional one is. And it could just be saying the words traditional and simplified. I have no idea. But that's why I was asking before about Mandarin and Cantonese. So because like if one of them is one and one's the other, I think we'd want to map it to the right if the country does play into that at all, because those dialects are pretty strongly different.
Yeah, and so what I did whenever I created this language to try to figure out like China or Hong Kong, I went through, tried to find as the country closely associated that utilize Chinese simplified or Chinese traditional, and that's where I came up with the China and Hong Kong. The thing I will say, yeah, and that was just like some Google research and things like that. Use some Copilot to try to figure out like, okay, where are these what countries are these languages most closely associated to? The thing I would say though too is when you come in here and you're trying to add languages to your forms and say you have like that Chinese traditional or Chinese simplified, it's not going to automatically do anything for you. So it's going to always dictate whatever you put in this field, in this text field for simplified. So you control whatever translation is here. Like you pick you'll pick the locale or previously the language, but you dictate what's in the translated section.
Yeah, you would just want to make sure the parent understands which one they're picking.
Exactly. So
or
yeah, if
child,
your parent,
in this case,
if you have parents of that speak Chinese in some way, shape, or form, in some way, just yeah, I mean, and I don't know if there's like a recommendation from like South Carolina, but for me, like personally, like I would just want to know which one to choose as a parent. Or apologies, as a student, because this is a student.
Right, as a student. Yeah, that was my fault. I said parent. Okay, yeah. So but you guys already have all of that stuff translated.
Yes, all of the translated. Survey. Yeah, the survey has the translations already.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Are there any other questions maybe that I'm not seeing that I haven't answered? Because I do know we're over time, and if you have to drop and you have an immediate question, please just come off of mute. Pamela.
Okay, I have a question. For as the languages that I had already set up for the configured languages, the country was not necessarily lining up with the State Department. I can go in the assist locale and edit now and not break the link.
Have you done your mapping already?
I did.
You have. Okay. Are any of those system locales that you have set up associated to current form languages or that you have?
Yes.
So no, I wouldn't edit your current locale. What you could do, you could add a new locale, and then once you add the new locale, you can go into the form and take the language and then just change the language from the drop down. Because if you go in and edit the locale now that you have your form translations associated with that locale, it will break that linkage. And I don't want you to lose your languages.
Okay, and I think I already had done it, not realizing that if I did. Is there a way I can go back to look to see what I had it set it as before?
It shouldn't hurt anything. The form generator is going to be just looking at a link to that locale. It's an internal identifier. Changing the setting at this point shouldn't break any links that you have.
Okay.
So it does in all of our testing, in everything. Are you talking about changing a setting like with this?
Yeah, I think she's talking about changing the country, the supported country.
Oh, the country, it will break. It will break your form. It will break any of the, like, once you migrated the languages, it will break. Your translations will disappear from the form, because if you change the country, you're now changing the region language pairing, that has been set up. And so it will break the languages.
So is there a way I can go back to see what I had set before, just to ensure? Because if I go back and correct it to what I had before, or
I haven't tested that specifically. If you change back to say, like if you had it like on the country and you change back to the other country, and you can check it too to make sure. I mean, maybe you were one of those that it didn't break it for. I've never seen that, but I don't know. Do you have a copy of the form somewhere?
I don't know. Because I'm trying to remember if I printed it out when I did it before. Because it seemed like we had to do this by a deadline, so I had done it.
Yeah. Let me check in and see if there's any way to recover the form language. Let me check in to see if you've changed it. Is there any way to recover at all? I don't think so, because I think you could try to
I
switch
would
back.
just go ahead and test it first. Just, if you have a parent who can log in and look at it, or if you have a parent portal
Well, you
account
can tell.
yourself.
You would be able to tell if you go to your edit, if you go to your manage forms, you should be able to see it. Usually the language isn't going to appear anymore. Well, and what I'm thinking, sorry, what?
Manage forms.
Oh, sorry, I was talking to myself. I'm mute now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The form language would usually in everything I've ever tested, the form language doesn't even appear here. If I've changed the locale or edited the locale in any way, shape, or form. Sorry, while you're checking that, I know Jessica, your hand has been up for a while.
Yeah, we have a group of 7 or 8 districts on this call together, and one of our questions primarily is surrounding the single sign-on. How do students choose the language if all of our districts have single sign-on enabled?
That's kind of outside the Ecollect bounds for me. Chad, or I don't know if Wendy's still on. Do y'all have the answer for that on the SIS side?
Yeah, once you're logged in, if you didn't, so what she's showing right there where it says select language, if you have single sign-on and they don't get to see that, after signing in, they'll see a language option. I think it's in the upper right-hand corner. So
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was thinking it was probably something already established, because it probably defaults to English, and then if you need another language, you would have probably already changed it.
Yeah, it'll default to whatever they have set here. So if they didn't get to set here, it will default to whatever you have marked as default, which should be English. So yeah, I don't know if you can Tracy, if you can sign into this, but you can leave it on English, it's fine. But if you can sign into this so they can see. I
have to navigate to one that I actually have
a
parent portal in. Are you talking about the gear icon that used to be, or is it like a different?
No, I can't describe it so well, but if you log in, you'll see it. I think it's in the upper right corner if I remember correctly.
Let me pull this. Let me pull this off, because I'm gonna have to access my password manager. Oh, I hate these stupid bars. Okay. Let me grab that. Okay. I always forget my parent portal, so I always have to access my password manager because I don't always have it. Okay, there we go. Okay, can you see on my screen?
Yes.
Joe, are you talking about something? Do y'all have another?
Yeah, it used to be there.
And I know before locales, I know within forms, there was always, you had the gear icon. that was
Mhm.
over here.
Right.
And then you'd be able to select the preference of the language. Maybe it's now, uh, oh, you know what? It could be now in your account preferences. You select the language. If you're using single sign-on, maybe that's how. I have nothing that
Yes.
has single sign-on. So
Yes, that's correct. I had it wrong in my head. I was actually thinking of InfoSnap. You are correct. Well, that's where they would go change it. So if they have single sign-on, they can go fix it here.
yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you showed that because I was saying it wrong.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. So account preferences, and then go to select language, and then save. Thank you, Joe, for your help. I don't have any environments that we use single sign-on in any way, shape, or form. So I don't ever see how they select languages in that and have a way to test that. Okay. And I know, Pamela, were you able to?
I think the only one I changed, because I had all of them as United States, so I think it was the China. I only had one China in there, and I changed it to Hong Kong.
Okay. And do you see the languages anymore in any previous languages you had on your form?
And far as where would you go to? Should I go to?
So
To
in managed
check.
forms, if you had languages as before you migrated and then before you changed it on your form, you can go to manage forms, select whatever form you had, the language that Chinese,
Okay.
select any of the little blue orbs, and then you could check here.
Well, actually, I don't even have any forms on my forms.
Oh, they're your district. Okay, then they're on the district page.
And then the district forms, I didn't. I have forms that somebody else created before my tenure here.
And maybe we should chat. We might need to take this offline to kind of just walk through and check.
Okay.
Yeah. Chad, I'm not, and maybe you and I can discuss whatever you want to do for that one.
Okay. You want me to send you my email, put my email address in the chat, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we hadn't sent the forms out yet. There's been a couple questions about, I guess that's what they mean by plug-in. When did the current year climate survey plug in with directions sent out, or is it available somewhere? I know Wendy just sent out an email, but we're getting those prepped now, and we'll be sending them out. The dates for the survey window. Let me pull those up. Are coming up in February, so.
And Kelly, I don't know if your question was pertaining to the climate survey or just in general. I don't have any forms showing under district forms either. District form, if you own the or actually no, you should have district forms. Or you just don't have any? Or are you just talking specifically about the climate survey? In general, I do not have any forms.
Wendy, I don't know if this is because, we consolidated a year and a half ago and we are not using Ecollect forms for enrollment and all. But yeah, under manage forms, I have nothing under my forms or district forms. They're both blank.
And so that would possibly be like if you consolidated and no forms were transitioned over, or like no forms are built, that's usually why nothing would show up. The only other thing is if for some reason the install is kind of messed up, but I haven't seen that for at least a year. So yeah, I think the first question would just be to like if you're even utilizing it outside of the climate survey, or if it's just because of nothing's been built. Do y'all use it outside of the climate survey or?
I don't know.
Okay.
But I would have assumed that we would have done the climate survey last year.
Yes, but the climate survey isn't going to show up in your My Forms or in your district forms list.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not going to show up in there. Even previous versions of the form is not going to show in that list for you.
Okay.
And
Thank
so
you.
like if you have questions like too, like if you know, if for some reason you feel like you should have forms, but they're not appearing, I would definitely put in an Ecollect support case. But if it could just be that no forms exist because nobody's built forms or there were no forms transitioned over during the consolidation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. I don't know if there's any other link. Does anybody have any other link? I know we're way over time. Anybody have any other questions related to system locales or the configure form languages or the locales for the climate survey? Perfect.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. If you have any questions, please email us or get in touch with us. We'll be glad to respond as quick as we can. And y'all have a wonderful weekend and try to stay warm with this storm coming.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.